În kickboxing, doamnelor și domnilor, se luptă pentru Storm. Let's give it up din Luton, United Kingdom, for Andrew Tate!
Introducing Chase DeMoor!
Nobody was ready for this. I don't care how long you've followed influencer boxing, how many Misfits cards you've watched, how many times you've said, this sport has gone too far. The moment Andrew Tate walked into a boxing ring on December 20th, 2025, everything changed. Not because of the punches, not because of the result, but because for the first time ever, the most controversial man in combat sports finally put the talk to the test, under boxing rules, with nowhere to hide. This wasn't just another crossover fight. This wasn't just another loud name chasing clicks. This was Andrew Tate, a man whose reputation has lived entirely in words, clips, and mythology, stepping into the most unforgiving environment possible. No kicks, no clinch dominance, no escape routes, just fists, timing, and pressure. And the boxing world froze. Because whether you love him or hate him, one question had haunted combat sports for years. Can Andrew Tate actually fight? Or was the entire thing a character? That's why this fight hit different. Before a single punch was thrown, this bout had already shocked the world. Not because it was announced, but because it actually happened. Tate didn't pull out. He didn't pivot. He didn't change rules last minute. He showed up. Gloves on, lights on, and suddenly, the internet went silent. The lead up to this fight felt unreal. Months of speculation, disbelief, and argument flooded social media. Every clip of Tate training went viral. Every sparring rumor turned into a headline. Every interview became dissected frame by frame. People weren't asking who would win. They were asking what version of Andrew Tate would show up. Because boxing exposes everything. It exposes cardio, it exposes defense, it exposes fear. And Chase DeMoor knew that. From Chase's side, this fight wasn't about fame. He already had that. This was about legitimacy, about being the guy who either exposed Tate or became part of his legend. As the reigning Misfits heavyweight champion, Chase walked in with size, youth, and momentum. Bigger frame, younger legs, less baggage. But here's the thing nobody talks about enough: pressure. Chase DeMoor wasn't just defending a belt, he was defending reality itself. Because if Andrew Tate walked into boxing after years away and looked competent, let alone dangerous, the entire influencer boxing narrative flipped overnight. That pressure was everywhere. The weigh-ins felt tense. Not loud, tense. Tate didn't act like a showman. No wild theatrics, no forced hype. He looked calm, focused, almost bored. And that unsettled people more than trash talk ever could. Meanwhile, Chase looked locked in, but emotional, fired up, hungry, ready to prove something. And when fighters want to prove something too badly, boxing has a way of punishing them. Fight night arrived, and the atmosphere felt heavier than any Misfits event before it. Not louder, heavier. The crowd wasn't just excited, they were waiting to see if the myth survived contact. When Andrew Tate made the walk, the arena shifted. Booed by some, cheered by others, but everyone watched. Phones went up. Conversations stopped. This wasn't influencer boxing anymore. This felt like an experiment playing out in real time. And when the bell rang, you could feel it. The opening round told us everything we needed to know, and nothing at the same time. Tate didn't rush. He didn't chase. He didn't brawl. He stood tall, hands high, taking space inch by inch, jabbing not to score, but to read. Feinting just enough to see Chase react, testing range, testing timing. Chase came forward early, trying to assert physical dominance. He wanted Tate to feel the size difference. He wanted to back him up. And early on, it worked. Tate circled, reset, stayed patient. But something strange happened. Tate looked comfortable, not flashy, not explosive, comfortable. That alone shocked people. The second round is where the fight's psychology really began to show. Chase started throwing heavier shots, not wild, but committed. The kind of punches that look dangerous even when they miss. And Tate started answering with timing instead of power. Short counters, quick jabs, little moments that don't go viral but matter deeply inside the ring. You could see Chase getting frustrated, not because he was losing, but because Tate wasn't breaking. The pace wasn't overwhelming him, the moment wasn't too big. That's when boxing becomes mental. By the third round, the crowd realized something important. This wasn't going to be chaos. This was going to be control versus urgency, experience versus emotion. And no matter what side you were on, you had to respect what you were watching. This is where the world reaction really exploded. Not after the fight, but during it. Social media flipped in real time. Fighters, analysts, and fans started posting mid-fight. Some shocked, some angry, some impressed, some confused. Because Andrew Tate wasn't supposed to look like this. The later rounds told a deeper story. Chase was still dangerous, powerful, athletic, and game, but the effort was starting to show. Bigger movements, wider swings, slight pauses after combinations. Tate, meanwhile, stayed measured. He wasn't hunting a knockout. He was managing the fight. And that's what made this spectacle so insane. This fight wasn't about a highlight reel KO. It was about the moment influencer boxing crossed into something else entirely. A place where preparation, composure, and ring IQ mattered more than virality. After the final bell, the reaction was instant and nuclear. Boxers started weighing in immediately. Some admitted they were wrong. Others doubled down. A few gave reluctant respect, not because of dominance, but because Tate didn't embarrass the sport. That alone shook the industry. Because for years, influencer boxing lived in a bubble. Big personalities, controlled matchups, safe narratives. This fight popped that bubble. Whether you liked it or not, it forced boxing to reckon with the fact that the lines had blurred permanently. The post-fight conversation wasn't about scorecards. It wasn't about belts. It was about implications. What does this mean for Misfits Boxing? What does this mean for crossover fighters? What does this mean for Andrew Tate moving forward? And maybe the biggest question of all, did this fight change the ceiling of influencer boxing forever? Because once someone like Tate steps in and doesn't fold, the rules change, expectations change, stakes rise. The next guy can't just show up with hype. He has to show up with skills. And that's why this fight mattered. Not because of who won or lost, but because the world finally saw Andrew Tate box. No excuses, no smoke, no mythology, just gloves, rounds, and reality. By the time fight week arrived, it stopped feeling like just another Misfits card and started feeling like an actual cultural moment. Not because of belts, not because of rankings, but because Andrew Tate stepping into a boxing ring after years of noise, controversy, and myth building felt like the final unanswered question hanging over the entire influencer boxing era. People weren't tuning in just to see punches. They were tuning in to see if the persona could survive reality. Press conferences were tense in a way that felt different from the usual scripted trash talk. Tate wasn't loud for the sake of being loud. He was controlled, almost surgical with his words. Chase DeMoor, on the other hand, looked like a man trying to convince himself as much as the audience. Bigger frame, younger body, champion status. But standing across from someone whose confidence felt immovable. That contrast alone had people split down the middle. You could feel it online. The comments weren't jokes anymore. They were debates, real arguments about experience versus size, about kickboxing habits translating to boxing, about ring rust versus hunger, about whether Tate had spent the last 5 years evolving quietly or just talking loudly. Nobody agreed on anything, and that's when you know a fight has crossed into dangerous territory. Fight night itself didn't feel like Misfits. The arena buzz was different. Less meme energy, more tension. People were genuinely locked in, because for the first time, this wasn't about clout farming. This was about exposure. Andrew Tate's image was either about to be validated or permanently cracked. And Chase DeMoor knew that beating Tate wouldn't just be a win, it would be the defining moment of his entire career. The aftermath was instant chaos. Fighters weighed in within minutes. Some gave respect, others downplayed it. Some doubled down on their old opinions, but nobody ignored it. That's the real victory in a fight like this. Relevance that can't be dismissed. People who predicted Tate would gas were suddenly quiet. People who said Chase would overwhelm him were scrambling for explanations. And people who said this fight shouldn't happen were now debating who Tate should fight next. That's when you know a fight has shifted the landscape. Because this wasn't just about Andrew Tate versus Chase DeMoor. This was about the ceiling of influencer boxing, about whether experience still matters, about whether years of training can still trump youth and size when the moment demands discipline. And love him or hate him, Tate walked out of that ring with leverage, options, momentum. The conversation moved from should he fight to who's brave enough to fight him next. Chase, meanwhile, didn't lose credibility. If anything, he gained it. He proved he belongs in serious conversations. He stood in front of the biggest spotlight of his career and didn't fold. That matters. And that's why this fight will be remembered. Not for a single punch, but for what it represented. The night Andrew Tate finally boxed. The night Misfits felt real. The night opinions got tested. Whether you walked away impressed, disappointed, or conflicted, you watched history. A moment that will be referenced every time someone says, this is just influencer boxing. Because after December 20th, 2025, it wasn't just that anymore. And whatever comes next, rematches, new opponents, bigger stages, this fight will always be the moment the conversation changed. Let me know what you thought watching it live. Did Tate exceed expectations? Did Chase show enough? And is this the moment influencer boxing officially grew up? Drop your thoughts because this debate isn't ending anytime soon.